the worst type of living conditions on base?
I don't think I had. I mean, other than like a couple barrack sections that they really kept unkempt because they were soon going to be torn down or designated as something else. But it was like where you would go for the first 2 3 days if you were when you're getting to your unit and they're waiting to place you and put you in a room somewhere, and you're waiting for that Monday morning 07:30 that you're showing up in the pickle suit. So you're just sitting in these barracks for over the weekend, 2 3 days maybe.
And did the barracks have mold, cockroaches, mice, anything nasty in it?
Nah, just dusty and dirty. Like someone who was staying there before probably didn't clean up after themselves. Or just fact that they're just been sitting there basically hardly used. Yeah, and that was one thing. Yeah, the bathrooms would be kind of a little bit grody. Some grime in there. I don't know about mold. I didn't really check around, but when they sit there and tell you, oh yeah, so go get some cleaning supplies, and while you're here, you can clean the bed, and it's like, yeah, fuck you, dude.
I said, don't disturb you. I'm cleaning my room.
I straight up told the duty, yeah, you can go fuck yourself unless you're gonna pay me the money to go do that. Like, I'm not gonna spend my own money to supply your guys' shit here. What, you think this is boot camp? I told him, get the fuck out of here, dude.
Motherfucker Jones.
And I go, you see, that's probably why these barracks are so fucking dirty, because you guys ain't, you guys are being dicks about it and expect us to go, I'm not gonna care, like I said, that's already money spent, just to continuously give somebody product all the time is like,
Yeah, you're
I
not going to
think this
go down to the PX and spend $30 on some
50, 60
fucking
bucks,
simple
yeah, 50,
green
60
and shit,
bucks to get
right?
fucking cleaning gear, dude, to mad clean this shit that hasn't been touched because I'm just here for a day or two. Yeah, get out of here, man.
Get the fuck out of here. How about
You
you,
know,
Beth? What was the worst living conditions on base that you came across?
Same thing with Alex. I didn't really have one. It was just more of because everything was the brick and stuff like that. So we didn't really have any problems with when it came to mold unless it was coming through the shower because there was more moisture in there. But it was more of just the cleanliness from the Marines themselves. So like when we had to do our field days and stuff like that, it's just nobody ever wanted to pick up after themselves throughout the week. So when it came to field day, it's just like you're seeing this mess of how we kind of live throughout the week. And yeah, it was just hard because sometimes we had to clean up behind the washers and dryers, and you'd find these little mice sometimes behind there because they're sitting there eating the food because nobody wanted to go to the trash, throw their food out, so we're throwing it. I was like, yeah. So we would always get our ass handed to me. I think that's only the bad thing that kind of really came from it, but it wasn't so much our living conditions. I would say it was more of our work conditions, if anything. That was pretty bad. So sometimes if you're a dispatcher, you would sometimes have to stay the night depending on when trucks were coming back or if you had to get up early in the morning. So there would be somebody staying overnight. So living there was probably our worst conditions, not so much our barracks. So this place had so much asbestos. They just now, I think a couple months ago, condemned this place. But yes, it was going dating back all the way to I think the 70s or 60s is when Cherry Point kind of came around. So this place was just so habitable that they made it our motor tea shop, and here we are working and breathing and living in this asbestos and stuff like that. So I know a lot of us did get sick quite a bit and stuff from it, and like I didn't even want to go to the bathroom. It looked like just nobody's ever cleaned for many many years. So the rust from the toilets and just everything's just so rusted and nothing was ever replaced. So yeah, we would do field day over rust and all this dirty crap. And it's like, what are we really cleaning here other than just germ free? That was my experience. Just where we worked.
What about you, Brody? Do you remember the worst living conditions that you had on base?
I mean, my unit had been busy for quite a while, and when we got back to the unit got back from Iraq, there was actual condemned posters and shit like all over our base, like on every single building. The German government had come by and I guess did an inspection for some kind of thing, but it was literally condemned. And so we just tore all that shit down and fucking moved back in. And we didn't change anything, but yeah, after the condemned posters and shit like that, we started noticing there's black mold in just about every fucking barracks room. Like, so they painted over it, and then we're fucking good to go for a while. I think they knew that the unit was going to be closing in 2007, so they didn't want to spend the money to like actually fix anything. It was more just cover it up and fucking keep the unit going.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a funny thing, though, is all those condemned posters.
Interesting.
They pretty much had the same thing at Camp Porno. What was going on was they had a bunch of 1950s flat tops. So it's a double squad bay with a large bathroom, open bathrooms, showers, restroom, all that. No stalls, no shower curtains, nothing in between. And this was very boot campish, with the open squad bays. And they had condemned them and they were going to tear them down. And then 9/11 happened. And then 223 was activated, 2nd Battalion, 23rd Marine Regiment. And when these guys were activated, you had one company from LA, one company from Las Vegas, one company from Salt Lake City. I can't remember where the weapons company came from, but these guys had to come from all 3 of those states, leave their shit, come there, and I was on plumber detail, and I went in there and no shit took down the caution condemned tape right in front of their first sergeants. And I believe it was Fox 223 that had the flat top that I was responsible for repairing. And I said, look, you guys have priority. I'll fix whatever you need fixed. But my recommendation is go in there and fill day. And when I came in there later that day to start fixing shit, I started hearing their first sergeant bitching. And their first sergeant could not believe that they were putting them in there with all the mold and everything. I mean, this flat top had been sealed for maybe a year at this point.
Yeah.
And I felt so bad for those guys. And the funny part is like some of these guys were like LAPD, LA County sheriffs, it was just hilarious that you take these guys who have been out of the Marine Corps, living it up with their wife and their house and their great bed. And then all of a sudden you put these poor bastards in an open squad bay that was fucking condemned to be torn down. I cannot fucking believe it. All right. Next question. Alex, do you remember any like really old gear, like equipment that was actually older than the operators that were operating?
We lost Alex.
Oh, we just lost Alex. Okay. He must have hit something on accident. How about Beth? Beth, do you remember any piece of equipment that was actually older than the Marines working in?
Yeah, we were always working with World War II stuff all the time because, again, 9/11 was just so fresh that they hadn't built the type of equipment that needed for this type of war. So we were working with 5 tons and stuff like that. Um, I remember some of them still being the old stick shift. So, like, obviously, everything today was more modernized where we were using push buttons and everything we kind of do it manually, but we had to actually like use a shift lever to sometimes move the truck. So working with that, not everybody knew how to drive stick. I personally did because my parents taught me. I knew I was going to need it. They thought for the military, so they taught me. But moving forward, there were a lot of people that just couldn't drive it. So I got nominated quite a few times compared to some of the guys that did know it. And we just have to move these trucks within the what do you call it, the motor pool area itself. We never deployed with them or anything like that, but I remember being familiar with that. Some of our dump trucks were also very old 5 tons, and their manual was like, again, a shift lever itself. And the transmissions were just so beat up. I got sick and tired of having to like deal with this. So they eventually recycled those out as like the war had pushed on. We started coming out with the MRAPs, and they had upgraded the 7 tons eventually, especially with the fuel trucks in 2009. But that's what I dealt with, was those type of vehicles.
What about you, Brody? Do you remember any piece of equipment that was older than the soldiers using it?
Bro, I was Army. You know, I hate to say that, but
hand-me-downs.
I mean, all your shit was our shit back then. You know.
So there
No,
were no Bradleys that were older than the
no,
drivers.
no. Oh, I mean,
Really?
yeah, I guess that probably could be, but I mean, all of our
They've
stuff
been
was
upgraded.
really well taken care of and maintained because we had money. So, no, the only fucked up thing I ever ran into with gear or anything like that was when I got into Afghanistan. They gave me my M4 and it didn't have a rear sight.
It didn't
Yeah,
have a rear sight.
yeah, no. And it took me 2 fucking months to acquire a red dot, but I didn't have any batteries. So it took me another month after that to finally just say fuck it, and I broke into the supply bay and fucking stole them. So
And they were holding on to the gear that you fucking needed. Typical
yeah,
fucking supply, man. How
yeah.
about you, Alex? Do you remember any pieces of equipment or gear that were older than the Marines using it?
Oh, like the vehicles,
Yeah.
like all of our weapons. I heard something about with Brody, like all the stuff that Brody used to have that we finally got.
Yeah.
Because I tell you what, man, even my barracks room, the one I got to that was decent, the furniture and all was adequate, but we were getting new stuff from the guy, and this was all the cabinets and furniture from the Marines in Okinawa in Japan, because all those Marines was getting all the stuff from the Army. So we finally got like wall lockers with EGAs etched in on them and shit in our rooms. It was like, no, like something that's older than the like everything was, dude. Well, I'll tell you this one piece of gear I remember, the moonbeam. So when I got to my unit, I was originally issued the old L-shaped green cylinder, L-shaped moon, OD green moonbeam, and then you screw the cap off and you rotate whatever lens to give it the color.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was about to go on my deployment that they went through all my gear and they said, yep, that one right there. Well, they went through all of our gear because it was like the year after I got to my unit, they started issuing the new one, which was the rectangular LED where the light would flip up and down. And it had its own setting to change out the so you didn't, it was a more updated, futuristic fucking moonbeam. I didn't get that until I went on my deployment in 2011. So I got first issue the fucking old school one. I wanted to keep that shit, dude. I'm like, this is a relic from the old time before the dark times, before the empire.
This is new. I got it at Tractor Supply. It's not even made by the same company anymore. It's got a different logo on it, but it works pretty good. So with the Moonbeam, there's 3 settings. There's off, there's signal, and then there's a steady stream. And what it is, it's designed to click on your vest or flak jacket or interceptor vest, whatever it may be. And when you're pointing at something, it's supposed to be pointing forward. So this, instead of having nowadays where we put lights on our weapons, it was just something like this where it would point forward. And that's why it's in an L shape instead of your typical straightforward.
Yep.
With
Yeah, and
my
the new one had a lever because it was squared and it would go like this. Same thing, you can still clip it on your side, but it was now more of a L shaped, or you can pull it out straight.
okay, nice,
And
nice.
it was all LED light.
With my unit, me being a machine gunner, when I actually went through machine gunner school, they actually had a 1943 M250 cal. Now it wasn't an M2 originally; it was just a 50 caliber machine gun. And the reason why, or caliber 50 machine gun, And the reason why is because it had been upgraded to an M2. And the three things that it did was they changed the charging handle, they changed the spade grips from wood to plastic because of Vietnam of the rot, and they put a shot aperture on the rear of it where the spade grips are. And you could basically click it over to where it could now do a single shot instead of fully automatic. The other things that we had were like 1944 tripods. So originally they were a 30 caliber Browning machine gun, and then we have a traverse and elevation bar that we would put on it. I'm sorry, a mount. We would originally put our 240 Golfs on this tripod that was from 1944. We had other pieces of equipment, but when we went into Iraq, only 2 of the 8 Humvees were new. So the majority of the Humvees were older than the drivers driving them. And these are the original engines. And we actually blew a piston rod out of one of the Humvees. It was a tow missile Humvee for tube launch, optic sighted, wire guided missile. And when it blew, it actually went through the fiberglass hoods. Because when I went to Iraq, our Humvees were made out of aluminum and fiberglass for amphibious assaults to go over beach landings and stuff like that. They were not up armored. They were not designed to go into urban environment and take bullets. They were not bulletproof. We actually had to cover the bullet holes with duct tape and spray paint so the enemy didn't know that our doors were not bulletproof because they could just spray and pay us. A lot of old equipment when I was in. I got in under Clinton, and I was in boot camp during Clinton, and then Bush got elected when I was in boot camp. And so when I was in School of Infantry is when Bush was inaugurated, and he got some money to the Marine Corps. And then when 9/11 happened, he really got some money to the Marine Corps, but it did not matter because our barrels were already worn out. A machine gun barrel can only take 200,000 rounds on it before it wears out. And you have to imagine from 1996 to 2003, how many hundreds of thousands of rounds we shot through those barrels. My next question is,
on something. Hang on real quick. We were talking about the going back to my 5 tons. I agree with you on the material and the aluminum, or maybe that's what it was, the doors, and like how like thin and frail. Because I remember it being so easy to open compared like the 7-ton doors, for example, or even the Humvees were more the like a tarp almost sometimes, or you would sometimes actually get maybe the more fiberglass kind of doors. So it was always changing. But what I really noticed the most was the glass in the 5 tons compared to like the 7 tons and Humvees is it didn't have like almost that protective film. So if it did get like shot or hit or something, it would kind of crumble. No, it's just straight up glass. So it's like I could only imagine if that glass got hit, you're getting like shards of glass in your face or something. So yeah, they weren't even built for a war that we went into. So I can only imagine what it was like back then, having to have that type of equipment. Like it was garbage.
it really was. I mean, you got to look at the Marines that were storming the beaches of Iwo Jima. They had 30 pounds worth of gear on them. And then you look at the Rangers that were in Anaconda in 2001, where they were carrying, 70, 80 pounds worth of gear, not including their flak jackets or their interceptor vests, probably what they were issued. And later on in Iraq in 2003, my cousin, or no, I'm sorry, in 2004, my cousin was telling me that they were doing like PT and they were doing humps with their packs. When you do your pack with everything on it, you're pushing 100 pounds or more. And I'm thinking, why are these Marines training in Iraq? You want to go train? Go run a patrol. Put your body armor on. Go take a 6-hour, 4-hour, 3-hour patrol. I guarantee you, you're going to get more of a workout than an hour of PT of whatever fucking your platoon sergeant tells you to do. But hey, I'm just a fucking college or non-college educated fucking grunt, right?
What do we know?
What do I know? I do know pain.
No, I agree with you on that. Because I fantasize it still. It's like whenever we always had a pack on our back, even though we didn't do the kind of stuff you did in like wartime, it was just basic training and stuff. Still, then I think that was like the hardest challenge for me is just even the weight we were carrying in the exercise going up these hills. That was more than enough than having to go run. So, I mean, I think that's where the runs were improving was having to do this type of strength training almost. It was crazy. No, I didn't do patrols, but even just our gear, our flak jackets and the sappy plates being so heavy and standing there. I remember we didn't have to go far. Just I didn't even want to stand there and like it was just so heavy. I was getting a workout from all the gear we were carrying, even on Iraq.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
hurry
Brody.
up and wait and stand there for about half an hour with all your gear. That's the workout right there, man.
Yeah, we
I
were
want to know if
sleeping in
Brody
it.
being mechanized. Brody, did you have to go on humps when you were in a mechanized scout unit?
Oh yeah, all the time. You remember, like just because we were heavy doesn't mean we did. Like we had that 4 months out of the year that we would still do light scout shit, and so I mean I think the average was like around 110 pounds that we had to carry, and then that didn't include fucking ammo. So like that's going to be another I don't know how much, but yeah, I've done a lot of mileage on my fucking boots.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Marine Corps, you know, we start you off small. I think there was like a 5 mile hump, 15 mile hump, then they do the 20 mile hump, and then they do the 25. And this is just in school. And then once you get to the fleet, it's always 20 or 25. It's never under 20. And it's like, well, fuck you, because Camp Pendleton isn't flat. Camp Pendleton has mountains, Mount Motherfucker, and everything. The Reaper, it doesn't matter. They're all there, and they're not really trails. They're just fire breaks going up the mountains. So they're kind of fuck
Crazy.
you. And I got to tell you, when I watch movies and it shows the infantry all muscular, I'm like, no, everybody in the infantry is slim. You know,
Yeah,
everybody is lethal. They have an athlete's
sweet,
body, a
sweet,
swimmer build,
sweet.
right? No,
Ain't,
yeah,
ain't
you
nobody ain't nobody looked like Sweet Johansson from
I
fucking
know.
Heartbreak Ridge. Okay, I tell you that because
I remember the guy.
that's still considered
Queen,
fat in the
Queen.
uniform.
They could have
Right,
given us
right.
unlimited food and we would have burned it all off.
Oh,
There's no
Yeah.
fucking way.
there's
You
no
can't
fucking
game that.
way. Like, you know, you watch these guys that are big in the unit, and you're like, oh, he's juicing, man. He's doing
Yeah.
Yeah,
roid.
he's on roids. His
He's on
old
Oh my
roid.
Uncle
God.
Roy is
I
helping him
got a story
out.
for you guys. This guy in Iraq, I think it was my first tour, and he was a sergeant. And he was always like a typical, like you say, the slim kind of guys because we're always running and we're carrying stuff. So we don't always have that big body. Somehow he blew the freak up out in Iraq somehow. And we're like, what are you doing? Because we're not being fed enough. We're not moving, but because we're always in the gym too. I'm not saying that didn't help, but I'm like, you're not eating that super clean. Like, we're not getting enough nutrients for whatever they're feeding us here in Iraq. But we come to find out he was doing some type of horse, what do you call it? Supplement, and it was
Ketamine?
making him blow up. And I was like, yeah, that's gonna hurt you in the long run. I haven't heard from him, but it was to the point he couldn't even get into his sleeves anymore. And like they had to start cutting them and like sewing them a certain way. I was like, yeah, you're only slowing yourself down. But he was huge and like he blew up within like 6 months. Like that's physically impossible to get that big in six
Yeah,
months. Even to this
if you
day, now that I
gotta
know
turn
science, I was like, it's still impossible. You were definitely on something.
if you gotta turn sideways to walk through a door, being jacked is
Yeah.
too jacked, man. You could be too
Yeah, he was
jacked
just too
there.
big. I was like, there's no way you could have gotten that jacked where you can't even get into your sleeves anymore. But yeah, I
The
always remember being
only
super slim in the military, but then getting out and doing my bodybuilding, that's when I grew muscle. I was just like, I didn't realize how skinny I was putting on my uniforms the other day. Just curious to see where I was at. I can't even get my arms in.
That guy in a little coat. That guy in a little coat.
Take it off, dickhead. I'm serious.
Richard, what's happening?
we had this guy in my platoon. His name was no, I'm not gonna say his name, but he was Mr. Texas, and he was built like a tripod. Like, you know what I mean? He had these big arms, big lats, just everything, but he had these little skinny girl legs. And what had happened in boot camp? was he was overweight for his height because of all the muscle mass. So they put him on a diet. I shit you not. He slimmed the fuck down. He says, I haven't been this slim since he was like 19 because the guy was 25 or 26 at the time. And that makes you realize the only guys that can be real big and swell are the guys who join in at 25, or maybe an officer who did 4 years in college. He got to 22. He was able to pick up the weight. Now he gets over to the grunts, and it doesn't matter. The grunts is going to slim your ass down. I do remember there was one lieutenant, and he was doing barbells, dumbbells, whatever the ones in one hand. They were 100-pound ones. And I'm like, he's the biggest guy in the fucking battalion, and he's an officer. You know his ass ain't out there in the field like the rest of us, and
Oh,
sure as
hell
shit he
no.
wasn't.
He's a gym rat. Oh.
How about so we already talked about old equipment and old weapons and stuff like that. Does anybody remember a 20-year staff sergeant? Because the rules changed. I know in the Army you could be a 20-year staff sergeant.
Well, I mean, to cap onto that, they have automatic promotions in the Army. I don't know if you guys know that.
To an extent in the Marine Corps. Once you get to a certain rank, then you have to go by we have these numbers that we use, and we have to like earn points. I forget how the system works to this day, but it was a certain thing. So from lance, or as you were private to, I think, corporal is where you have like a certain time limit when you have to pick up. And like I think it's like a year and a half. Once you hit that, you automatically just get promoted. By then, I think it was from corporal to sergeant, or maybe it was lance corporal to corporal, I forget. But that's when we start getting these numbers where we have to I forgot. How's it go, Nolan? Where we have to
It's
You have
accumulate
to
like
make
our
points.
PFT, our
So
just stats, stuff
right,
like that. He'll know
yeah,
more.
it's you have to have like a PT qual. You have to have a rifle qual. You have to have your pros and cons. Okay. And those three factors give you points. And then you have what are called your PMIs. And that's your like personal courses that you take for your MOS. And of course, you
NCI.
always take the course above you. So if you're a squad leader, you're learning the platoon sergeant's course kind of thing. And those four things give you promotion points. And in the Marine Corps, let's say you have 10,000 corporals trying to become a sergeant. Okay. They're only going to take 7,000. So 3,000 corporals are going to immediately get out. They're not going to pick up sergeant. And it's the same thing with staff sergeant, gunnery sergeant, and so on and so forth. And so once you become an NCO, it's a privilege. It's not a right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they do that at
I
the
don't know about motor
E3 rank.
T.
So when you go from E3 to E4, that's when it's a cutting score, and that's when
There
that
it is. Cutting
starts
score.
taking into
Yeah.
effect. And I didn't know that they told you had to get out if you didn't make your next rank, but I thought that was like once you get up to staff sergeant, because then you start having that you got to spend so much. Everyone knows we got to spend so much time as the rank, and once you get to staff sergeant, you got like 3 chances to pick up, because my staff sergeant, the staff sergeant we had at our motor pool, she could not pick up gunny, and by the time I was in the unit with her, this was like her third time going to the gunny board, and because she was a piss manager,
Okay.
piss poor staff NCO, it was like A, B, C, and D just to throw it on there. These are the reasons why you've been passed every time on the gunny board. So it was like once she hit that third time and was passed down from the gunny board, it was like, yep, you have to get out. And that's like I know another friend of mine through ROTC, he got out as a staff sergeant too, but and that's a retirement spot. It's a 16. It's once you hit the E6 pay grade, or you've been in for you got 16 years at least, then you can go for your retirement.
So basically, there's different things that happen. For instance, he was talking about shitbags getting fucking 86th out of the Marine Corps. there's another thing they'll do. So imagine you're shit hot, you pick up you're a Mustang, you pick up officer rank, but you really didn't go through college. You went through a city college or something like that. You didn't go through a JROTC, or you weren't in Annapolis or anything like that. And you came up through OCS. Those guys will term limit at captain. They won't give them major. They won't give them a staff grade rank. They'll keep them at the company grade rank. And I've ran into several Mustangs who went through OCS. So if you do go through OCS, it behooves you, behooves you to go to college. Because if you don't go to college, they'll fucking term you out, just like they
yeah.
termed out that staff sergeant.
I got something on my end too, because this is actually what happened to me when I was getting out. It's during the Obama administration, because there's also what we call service limitations, and I'm pretty sure all branches have this, but it comes up to the point where once you hit sergeant, maybe they did it with corporal too, I'm not sure, but to pick up sergeant to staff sergeant, they said it used to be like 12 years. Well, because the Obama administration was trying to cut back, it's when they said, okay, for sergeants, we're changing from 12 to 10-year service limitation. So it's like I was at that like kind of 8-year mark, but technically 10 because of my broken service, the way it worked out. They're just like, because you're coming up so close on 10 years, it's like either you get out or you could deploy with us and then get out, and I didn't realize that I could have stayed in. Looking back now, I talked to my master gunnery sergeant, but he was saying technically what they're supposed to do is they have to look at you first before like anything else. And I was like, I didn't know this, obviously, but yeah, you're supposed to still have that chance to try and get that rank, even if before they let you go. But in my eyes, I'm like looking back, I'm kind of glad it worked out the way it did with my mental health. So, but
It
I did
makes
want to
it
stay in
feel like
so bad.
the Army, it makes me feel like the Army rank is your right, not your privilege, if you give
Well,
it
no.
by.
You guys kind of cut me off, and I didn't get to finish.
Oh, sorry. Poor guy.
So like E1 to E4, it's all just time and grade. It's just you move up and up and up. But once you hit E5, that's where it changes. There is the exact same thing. Like if there's 10,000 people, only 7,000 are going to get it. And the Cav Scout community is really small, so it's even more strict for that specific thing. So everyone fights for E5. And we go through, we have to have the same boards. Like there's classes that we got to take, PLDC, like all this kind of shit. And so after the points still can be like, they don't matter if you are squared away. And the board for E5 is the most important thing, because they'll have like sergeant major, bunch of like one of your NCOs from your platoon will be there, and they drill you on all these questions, and you have to know your shit. Like you have to know all these fucking codes, and like the Uniform Code of Military Justice, like all that shit, Army regulations.
So we call that a promotion board, and a promotion board, you're only allowed like one a year for a corporal or a sergeant. And the promotion board is a meritorious corporal or meritorious sergeant. And I was selected for meritorious corporal. I got wounded, and then I was told it went to somebody else that was deployable. With that being said, if you pick up rank fast enough, like in the Army, you're able to make it. And one of the other things they do, now I don't know what they call it in the Army, but they call it a NAM, Navy Achievement Medal. And a Navy Achievement Medal is like the Army's version of a Bronze Star. If you don't have so many of them at a certain rank, you do not rate. And I've noticed that certain officers get NAMs with Valor when the enlisted did all the work. And I'm wondering if it's also the same in the Army, where the enlisted do all the work and an officer gets a Bronze Star.
I mean,
cut in real quick. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. This literally just triggered me because this happened in my third tour of Iraq. My gunnery sergeant, I did so much work out there fixing these trucks, getting these douchebag freaking troops off their asses to actually get them to at least sweep the bay. And he took my NAM away from me. And when you say that, how it helps them, that fucking now just made sense. Why
It
he
makes
did that
sense.
shit to me. Fuck him. And then he got promoted to master. So I'm like, how's this dirtbag getting promoted when he literally is such a womanizer? Literally.
Because he got a
I was
nab.
being
He got a fucking
sarcastically, but
nab.
he really was.
It's like, look, okay, there's a
Sure.
certain individual that died on January 1st. I'm not going to talk about that individual. But if you look at their record, they have several Bronze Stars, but only like one of them is with Valor. And I'm like, how do you earn a Bronze Star without Valor?
Yeah, I don't know. That don't make sense.
That don't make
I don't know.
sense, right? And it's the same thing with the NAM. You have a NAM and then you have a NAM with Valor. That makes sense because a NAM could be given to somebody who reads to children on Wednesday the Bible studies. Like my platoon, or I'm sorry, my company Gunny, he got a NAM for reading to children on his free time about doing Bible studies. Okay, that makes sense. And then my platoon commander got a NAM with Valor because he pushed our platoon up to a canal outside of Baghdad and we engaged the enemy and we did a recon. That makes sense. But like a Bronze Star and then a Bronze Star with Valor, you don't hear about a Medal of Honor with Valor.
Yeah. Interesting. I don't know. That's new to me, but
He's reading to
Lord.
kids. I didn't think they let Marines near kids.
This was a very special Marine. Let me
I
tell you.
can't
Okay.
read.
Let me tell you guys about Bart Fourier. All right. This guy looked like a French Foreign Legion poster. Okay. He was square jaw, libo stack up to here. I mean, fruit salad, you army boys, but we call it libo stack. And he did recon. He'd been all kinds of shit. And he even been kicked out of the Marine Corps and put back into the Marine Corps. He's a fucking like the epitome of what you think of as of a Marines Marine. And then you find out he's getting a NAV for reading the Bible to children on Wednesday. And you're just like, him? That man's scary as fuck. And he's around children. I shit you not. That was Gunnery Sergeant Bart Fourier. He's actually mentioned in a book when a Air Force captain was shot down in Kosovo and they did the trap platoon that rescued him. He's actually mentioned in the book where a Dishka round, a 52, 51 caliber machine gun round penetrated the CH-53 Sea Knight and it bounced around and he picked it up and put it in his pocket. It said Sergeant Bart Fourier, and that's how we know his name is Bartholomew.
Talk about Kosovo. I remember I'm sorry, this is off a military topic, but I know they were trying to send military police, or sorry, as you were, civilian police there because my stepdad was actually picked to go to Kosovo. I think it was late 90s going into 2000s. I remember either middle school or high school is where I was at. But he was supposed to go and he was really excited, but like all of a sudden he was going to take another spot of another police officer who died, and my mom's like, "You're not going, man. You're not gonna die." He's like, "You want me to take care of these children by myself?" And I was like, "I remember that day." I was like, oh, "That's funny." She's like, "You're not gonna go die." But yeah,
What
like it
about
was
you,
really bad
Alex?
for Kosovo. Like all these civilian cops that were going over there to help with the military, whatever was going on. I forgot the conflict at the time. But yeah, they were dying almost on a weekly basis. So that's why I was like, my mom would not let him go.
Yeah. What about you, Alex? Do you remember anybody getting NAMs or Bronze Stars when some enlisted guy did the work?
Oh yeah, man, you're talking about what I did too. Like, I mean, there was a couple guys I knew when I don't think it was a NAM, but they were getting some. It probably was because they one of the guys got some kind of an achievement for being out there. But like all the rest of us got was a piece of paper, like an appreciation, so for us doing all the work, and the fucking sergeant or the staff NCO that took the NAM, or for the corporal that no, like that shit where someone else does it, but because before that person, the other person did something, and someone before them they took, it's like a never ongoing cycle that you're gonna do all that work that would rate you getting a NAM, but the dude who's higher ranked than you, it's his turn to get it because he was doing it all before at some point for someone else to get the NAM before him. And it's like, rather than just giving it to someone because they're at that rank and they deserve it at that rank, it's like, no, give it to the person or the people that were involved actually doing what it was that required to
Right.
earn the NAM. It's called you earn what you earn from doing what you're doing in your service, not from what someone else was doing. So like, yeah, we had a little bit of that going on too, but the rest of us just got like an appreciation letter. Hey man, thanks for helping this guy get, you know, this is just the state, even though it's on black and white and read between the lines, you should have really gotten that award, but it's that dude's turn to get it. So this is your like certificate of appreciation. Next time something goes on and you're around for that and you should be getting it, then you'll get theirs or some shit. I don't know. I just kind
This
of threw it in my folder and put it in with the rest of my, it's in my briefcase somewhere. But
this my neighbor, he's a retired sergeant major from the Army, but before that he was in the recon element in Vietnam. And when he was getting out of the Marine Corps, he said, no shit, telling me this story, that there was a captain, a gunnery sergeant, and a corporal getting awards. And the way it works is the highest rank gets the rank or their award first. And the captain, he gets like a NAM for whatever he did. And it goes over to the gunnery sergeant, and the gunnery sergeant gets a Bronze Star in supplies. And then it goes over to the corporal. And the corporal is on a cane limping when he went up there. He's not staying in step. He's just limping up there. And it talks about this corporal that is a goddamn armor or a tanker, and the tank caught on fire, and he drags a guy out and this and that, and the guy lives and everything, and he gets a NAM. And when it was all said and over, the corporal walked over to the trash can. Let me rephrase that. The corporal limped over to the trash can with his cane and threw away his fucking NAM. And the colonel that was proceeding over the award ceremony, he said, I'm going to look into this. And the corporal's like, I don't give a fuck. But this gunny got a Bronze Star because he was shit hot on some supply shit. No, he knew the form to fill out is what it was. And that's what I feel what it kind of turns out, guys, is they know the forms to fill out. They know who to fucking co-sign an officer, because I'm told you need like 2 enlisted or 1 officer to verify the order. And when you're in supplies and you have an officer that will file for it, that's a Bronze Star for supplies. When you have a Marine literally pulling another Marine out of a fucking burning tank, and he's all fucking jacked up in the process, and he still succeeds in his mission, he gets a NAM.
yeah.
Well, I just want to say to everybody, oh wait, go ahead, Beth.
No, it brings me to my point. Also on this, my first tour, because I told you guys in my last video about the Humvee that blew up. Obviously, we're all fine and whatnot, but in your mind, that's a combat action ribbon, right? I didn't get one because they weren't giving them out just yet in that unit or in the at the time. But later on in our deployment, then they started giving them out for some reason. I didn't. They didn't tell me why they didn't give me one, but they just did a really good job, and they almost hit an IED. It was just blew up next to them, whereas my truck actually hit the IED. So it didn't hurt at the time. It kind of hurt my feelings, not because I didn't have the ribbon, but it's just like you didn't recognize this happened to me. So it was really weird for me. So it kind of goes back to whatever political reason they didn't do it.
Which is bullshit because in 2003, if let's say a frigate out in the Persian Gulf fired a missile into Iraq, everybody on that ship got a combat action ribbon. Like they were passing them out like hotcakes. You get a ribbon, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car. Everybody gets a car. Like I understand, like I earned my car, you know, I killed some motherfuckers and I got fucking almost dead because some guy was good with a rifle grenade and SKS one night, you know. But from what I understand, people going 3 tours to Iraq and not getting a car, that's unsat. That is not good to go. Like shit like that needs to be fucking rectified. But like we've been talking about with the NAMs and the Bronze Stars, that shit ain't gonna happen because of promotion.
Yeah.
That's all it was. I would have been a staff NCO way sooner. And I remember, I mean, I'm kind of going off the whole topic. I got demoted back in 2007. It was a DUI at the front gate. This is a whole nother story. But because of that demotion, I ended up having to go back to Lance Corporal. And it was a female sergeant major who wanted me to be the example for the females, even though what led me to this DUI was a guy trying to harm me. So I got in my car and drove to base when it was just like 2 minutes away, and I got caught. But anyways, yeah, this she thought she was making the example, and because of that situation, it actually hurt my career, and it got me stuck in this freaking loop at Cherry Point and not getting to advance in my career and all these other things. So it just goes to show, don't punish the ones that are the best. You should really punish the ones that really need punishment. So that really kind of hurt me sometimes too.
Well, I just want to say, you know, thank you for listening to Anti-Millennial Terrorizers. We are the millennials who went to combat, did some shit. And when you talk about our generation, fuck you, because we've been drinking today. So we'd have no problem telling you, fuck you, talking about millennials, because we are the generation, 100% volunteers who went to war for 20 fucking years, 2 goddamn wars, multiple conflicts. We did all this shit. And don't say it's just because, oh, we were the generation there. We were the generation there. These are the millennial anti-terrorizers. And thank you for listening to us while we're drunk.